Hello and welcome to another episode of The Energy Exchange, a podcast brought to you by A2EP that'll explore energy productivity and decarbonisation. And joining me here today is Matt Deegan from AMPC. Matt, welcome.
Good to be here, Jarrod.
Matt, I thought we'd just kick off. Let's hear a bit about AMPC, the meat industry in general in Australia, and your role at AMPC.
Yeah, so sure. So AMPC stands for the Australian Meat Processors Corporation. We're an industry-owned, not-for-profit. So what we do is we do research and development for our sector, and our sector are all the red meat processors in Australia. There's about 135 plants across Australia in every state, owned by about 105 businesses. And what we do with the R&D, we're an investor, so we provide money on an approved basis for certain projects, R&D projects. They could be research or development or adoption. And the processors then can access some funds that we have. The funds come from a combination of areas, some from Department of Ag, some from industry levies. So we leverage those two sources of money to help our processor members to do projects. So my sector, our sort of program is sustainability. And of course the focus on that heavily is energy as well as emissions, but there's other areas in that sustainability program as well, such as water and waste and community engagement, transparency and those sort of things.
And you've been driving this sector for AMPC for quite a few years?
Yes, so at the program, I've been looking after it at AMPC for 7 years. So it's been going pretty well. A lot of work, and it's getting more work, as you know.
You say pretty well. I think you're being modest there, Matt, because I read through the environmental performance report. Emissions intensity coming way down, water intensity coming way down, energy usage, so energy and carbon all coming down. Report's looking pretty good. How are you guys doing that? How is the industry moving forward, and what's making that happen?
Well, first thing, Jarrod, and we're sort of lucky to have those results trending downwards, which is where we want those intensity numbers to be going over a long period of time. But it's a team effort. So here at AMPC, we have a great team, a great R&D team. So we all work together. We all got our minds focused on member benefits, and the members do a lot of work, help us, importantly, they help us so much with their time and effort that they provide in reporting, particularly on the environmental performance review, which has been going for 20 years. So more than 20 years. That environmental performance review now has 70% of total sector throughput represented in the results. So, and that's a team effort, that's members and our team over a long period of time developing that report to the quality that it is now, and particularly the participation rate, which is very high.
Let's talk about some of the projects that have helped been driving some of these results. Maybe we'll start with water.
Yeah. Water, well, if you think about why is water intensity so important? Well, particularly it's important to Australia. It's the driest continent in the world. But it's important to our members' communities. So if you think about where our members are located, 80% of them are located in regional areas in Australia. And so it wasn't that long ago that we had a drought, 2019-20, which was really serious in some regional areas in Australia. So and we may experience that again, hopefully not, but it's a likelihood. So it's good for our members, and our members are focused on their water consumption, and their communities understand our processes here are doing the right thing as far as water intensity is concerned. So being really water efficient. So that's why we have a strong focus on that. The other benefit is if our members are using less water, then they'll use less energy, because most of the water used in red meat processing has heat attached to it. If you think when you go into a boning room, you've got to wash your hands, you've got to wash your boots, that'll be 45 degrees. If you go on the slaughter floor, there will be knife sterilisation, sanitisation, other forms of equipment being sanitised, that's at 82 degrees. If you look at the rendering plant, that'll be at 90 to 130 degrees. So there's a lot of water, and that's for food safety reasons as well. There has to be that water consumption for those reasons. So if we do a good job helping members to use less water, then they'll use less energy.
There's also a series of projects have happened, and I know you guys have been watching these and supporting these as well, to get people off gas and electrify as well. Well, I know, I'm certainly aware of the Kilcoy project at Kyneton, the heat pump there. Kilcoy have been doing other projects as well, haven't they?
Yes. Well, in the Renewable Heat Conference of 2025, they were awarded the Biogas Award. Now, they've done a lot of things there at the Kilcoy plant. That's all public information. It was on your website as well. Kilcoy has a biogas set up. They have cogen and they have biomass as well. So those three things have helped them to get climate active certification for that processing plant in Kilcoy. It's one of the only plants out of all those in Australia that has both a gaseous fuel and a solid fuel. So the management of those two things takes a fair bit of balancing, a fair bit of, good management to get that right, gaseous and a solid fuel. So, but they've proven that it can be done with great effect.
That's pretty much got them off of natural gas. So they've got some real fuel resilience there now as well.
Yes.
If you look at their site at Kyneton where they're using a heat pump for their hot water there, that's using solar and batteries mainly to charge that as well, yeah?
So solar, storage
Yeah.
and heat pump. So those three things, another good example of integrating different types of technology to get the best result.
When it comes to emissions for meat processing, there's a lot to do on the fugitive, the methane from coming from cattle and the likes and ruminant animals. I know that's not AMPC's bag at the moment, a lot happening with the likes of Asparagopsis and a lot of research happening there. That seems a little bit of a way off for economics, but yet in meat processing, there is economical things and decarbonisation steps are being taken. It's not just a few of the big ones. Take us through. The whole industry really does seem to be on the move here.
Yeah. Well, if you talk about the whole industry, bearing in mind that our mandate is just to support processors, you've got producers as well. Now, there's far greater number of producers than there are processors. A typical supply chain, your suppliers outnumber the receivers of that supply. So there are a lot of producers. MLA looks after that side of things with their research, their R&D, and as you mentioned, there's feed additives that are being looked at to lower methane, enteric methane. And while that's in its early stages, there are some good results coming in certain areas, and if that can grow further, then that will have further positive impact on emissions for the whole sector. There's also your traditional type methods in production as well on farm, such as rotational grazing. Genetics play a part, different types of pastures, those sort of things as well. When it comes to processors, our members, they've got established technology that they can use today to reach zero net emissions by 2050. We don't need, as processors, they don't need any really new technologies. That most of those technologies already exist. Our battle is around improving management and the optimisation of the existing technologies and their integration within the plant so that they can be managed as effectively as possible. Because if you think about a large processor, they're all very focused on improving their performance, their productivity, they're reducing energy, they're reducing water. But then if they're large businesses, large plants, they might have 1,200 people on site. They'll be labour intensive and they'll be capital intensive, and they're managing 1,100 or more head per day of animals, and they've got food safety risks to consider. They've got their work health and safety aspects to consider. They've got lots of regulation to consider. So there's a lot of things that they're managing. So managing all those things together takes a lot of time and effort and management skill.
The small producers, what about the small producers? What are they? Are they waiting for different heat pump projects and technologies to become more mature? Where are the smaller producers at?
Well, for smaller producers, they have, some of them have formed groupings in certain areas where they compare efficiency processes to improve their efficiency. Bearing in mind that they probably won't be installing large renewables on their site. The focus there is really around efficiency. Now every plant, whether it's small, large or medium, has a certain purpose, and the smaller ones will have a dedicated purpose to their own community. Their own community supports them. They love what they do. They eat the product. So that transparency around their own communities happens as well. So we find that right across the different levels of different sizes of plants.
And if they're moving on efficiency, I mean, first step for that is the metering. How are they going? How is that going, getting that metering in place to see that they are making a difference for their efficiency measures and be able to celebrate the improvements as well?
Yeah, we can never stop on monitoring and metering, can we? It always has to. It's a continual improvement type task. It has to keep getting better. And so even in small plants, people come and go. And so there may be an established methodology around certain efficiency actions that someone that's been at a plant for a considerable period of time may have helped establish and may have helped train staff on what this is and how it works and what you've got to do. And if they leave, then that efficiency task may disintegrate. It may not exist anymore. So people change. The change in people can upset the efficiency culture in a plant, whether they're small, medium or large. So the efficiency culture is something we still work on. We always will have to work on that. It'll never stop.
Just got to keep reminding them.
Yeah.
We often talk about barriers there, why we don't have enough resources, it's not enough payback. But you've nailed one major issue there. People change roles.
Yes.
So you need to be either working with a partner that can help this ongoing, or have really well established procedures to make sure that when there's a handover, the new person follows through on that metering and the efficiency as well.
Yeah, that's right. And again, comes back to management, as you said, having the processes and the record, the standard operating procedure that can be followed, that's easy to follow and can be handed on.
And a little bit on renewables and solar. Often, as I understand it, I think you've shown me and educated me this over the years, is that the energy usage profile, electricity profile, it follows the solar profile, but yet it's not really across the board for solar adoption just yet. How's things progressing in that space?
There's plenty of upside to stop the adoption of solar, not just rooftop but also ground mount. Plenty of opportunity, because electrification, as we know from your last renewable heat conference, electrification is going to play a bigger and bigger role in Australia as the grid decarbonises in all states. So to use electricity as a substitute for fossil fuels makes sense. So in order to have that electricity in the non-production hours, need storage as well. And so there's lots of potential to expand on that space as well.
Now we're certainly seeing the lower cost of batteries being a bit of a game changer when you start looking at these things in combination. I imagine that's having an impact on the industry as well.
Yeah, cost is a big thing, of course. I mean, we can talk about the process and this will do what you need it to do, but then how long does it need before it's paid off? And that can be a hurdle as well. So,
I just want to talk about bioenergy. It feels like there's a lot of momentum in the industry. The building blocks are falling into place with the NGAS reporting and green gas certification and what have you. But still there's a lot more to be done. We're following what you guys are doing really closely when it comes to valorising other things like digestate and what have you. Could you run us through a couple of the projects that you're working on there in that bio space?
Yeah, the bioenergy is a big focus for decarbonisation across the whole sector, because we just talked about the heat that's used in water and the different temperatures and the different activities that comprises. So bioenergy, if that's used to produce that heat, then that's going to be a better result in terms of productivity and reduction in emissions for the plant. So there's two things that we look at with the bioenergy, of course. There's the biomass and then there's the biogas. So with the biomass, we did a project, it was an R&D project, where we provided a portable boiler to 500 kilowatt boiler to go to different plants so they could try different types of solid fuels. Organic fuels. And those organics, some of them were on-site waste and some of them were off-site waste. So that waste factor turning those wastes into a resource that can be used as a solid fuel. That's what that project was about. So it proved that there's some really cheap ways and effective ways to create the same calorific value in the combined fuel, solid fuel, to get a really good economic result out of a biomass solution. And pelletisation plays a role in that, and that's something we're doing going forward, as far as that fuel needs to be a certain size and a certain quality, a certain moisture level, to be able to get the best calorific outcome possible. So there's some more work there.
So that's biomass and solid fuels?
Yes.
Biogas, what's happening? What are you guys doing in the biogas space?
Yep, so biogas, we've got various projects there. One of the big ones is being co-funded by Race for 2030 CRC, and that is around identifying the most suitable feedstock candidates that will produce biogas in the most productive way possible. All the feedstocks that have been examined are not just feedstocks that come from the plant themselves, but they could be through neighbours or other agricultural businesses that have crop residues or any other types of residues that are surplus, that are waste, within the vicinity of that plant. So we had 12 different plants provide 57 feedstock types for analysis under biomethane potential tests. There was 7,000 hours of BMP tests, 57 different types of feedstocks. At the end of that stage one, we had a pretty good idea for 2 of the 12 plants what combinations, what recipe was going to work the best as far as biogas productivity was concerned from all those feedstocks. So that was stage one. Now this is called anaerobic digestion, as you know. So stage 2 will be now using anaerobic co-digestion in larger pilots, larger biogas pilots that are 500 litres each. So there's more active management possible with those larger reactors, such as agitation, temperature, additives to help the biogas productivity. And that project is around working out the most productive anaerobic digestion process for the best feedstocks for those 2 site examples, one in Eastern Australia, one in Western Australia. The other side of that project is around looking at the revenue streams, not just the savings in energy, but the revenue streams from digestates that come out of that anaerobic digestion process. So these digestates haven't really been utilised to their full advantage. So we have a team from QUT which will be assessing regulations across Australia and what these digestates can be used for, where can they be used, for what purpose, and what regulation do they need to comply with, or is there a regulation that can be varied to include these AD-derived digestates, so we can get an extra revenue stream from that biogas process.
I mean, this is sustainability, this is circularity, all coming together there.
Yep.
Matt, so that sounds fabulous. And so with that digestate program there, well, that's going to be applying that to fields and watching how that performs as well, or is that the next stage on?
There is. That's part of the stage 2 as well. So pot trials, they'll be doing pot trials to confirm, the capability of those, let's call them organic fertilisers, for example.
You mentioned before how a lot of that biomethane potential testing you did, looking for that right recipe. And that's what the bio work is doing. But that sounds like you're going to be requiring co-digestion, taking waste from different areas. Now, from my understanding, the regulations aren't exactly supportive of that because it's considered a waste that you're dealing with, and it's rather risk averse. How much is that going to slow down development of these projects then?
It could be a roadblock, but it doesn't stop us from looking at the economic benefits, because if there's economic benefits and environmental benefits, that should mean then the regulators have to amend or vary or change something to allow this process to go ahead. If the hazards are being managed properly in the plan, and it's got an environmental and economic benefit for communities, for regional Australia, across different sectors, then what regulator wouldn't want to help the process?
They're going to need the data. They're going to need the data to show. And this is the work that you're putting together. We need to get that data to them on the level of pathogens, on the impact on the environment, the life cycle assessments, the yields from the crops. This is the work that we're looking to AMPC for, and hoping other will join in and start supporting with that data as well.
Yeah, and the data is correct, and the method as well, the treatment method, the methodology used to support the final product and its integrity. So if we know what happens in Australia currently, but if we only use what happens in Australia currently in terms of methods of treating waste products to get a final product, and that's what we have to keep using, then nothing will change. So part of that project with Race for 2030, we'll look at methodologies in Canada and the UK around dealing with digestates from AD processes, and what do the regulators support in those countries. What's the methodology used to be equivalent or to meet those regulations, and are those processes and are those regulations transportable to Australia? Can they be translated in an Australian context?
Exactly. Very important work there to work out what can be translated, what can we pick and choose and take, and what needs further research before we can uptake it, do that work. And this does displace imported fertilisers too.
It could. So we have to do the pot trials to ascertain, is there something else we need to add to that recipe, that digestate, to make it, a substitute for imported synthetic type products?
I mean, these meat processing sites, they start becoming energy sites.
Yes.
A fertiliser site. There's quite a bit of complexity coming on the future with these sites. How are your members of things thinking about that? They're like, do we want to manage all this, or what's their thoughts on this going forward?
Well, their thoughts are like you just mentioned, energy. Energy is not just a calorific value. It could be an agronomic value from the fertiliser. That's got an energy component to it, but that component is being used to help grow more effectively crops, for example, through a fertiliser, organic fertiliser. But most people know energy as being something that you use to heat up something, but it's not as simple as that, is it? There are lots of other bioresources that come from making the traditional energy that had been considered wastes, that we're looking to turn into resources that can get further energy value.
If we want to improve productivity, there's really no other way around it, is there?
Exactly. Yeah. And further on the Race for 2030 CRC project, stage 2, is the establishment of the BRAVA Centre in Western Australia. Now, BRAVA is an acronym for Bioresource and Valorisation Centre. So that is a centre that has a bunch of technology at pilot scale, which is looking at the whole wastewater treatment process and where wastes can be recovered at each step in the wastewater treatment process to turn those different waste streams into a resource or add value. So we're looking at nitrogen recovery through precipitation. We're looking at, of course, the bioenergy aspects. I mentioned the digestates, that we're looking at that. And also food grade CO2 may be one of those things as well. That's a bit more of an expensive process, but doesn't prevent us from looking at it and finding ways to improve upon the existing technology or the existing process. So there are different revenue streams that come out of a wastewater treatment process, and the BRAVA Centre is looking at how to valorise each of those steps in that whole wastewater treatment process.
Back on energy a little bit there, and let's talk about sort of renewable heating. We've got our conference coming up in September. We're very pleased to be working with AMPC on that one to bring a great case study of what's happening at Gundagai meat processing and the heat recovery, and a staged process to look at minimising heat usage, and then heat recovery, and then heat pump. Give us a bit of a teaser on that one for the conference, if you could. Sure.
Yeah, the Gundagai project is in its final reporting stage, and it'll be that case study will be ready for your conference, which is great. That project has been about reducing grid gas consumption at Gundagai. They're not a rendering plant. They don't have render. they're a medium-sized sheep processor. So it's a case study that should appeal not just to the big businesses, but also those SMEs that are looking for quick wins. It wasn't a quick project, it wasn't a simple project, because the project was around passive heat recovery, which you think, oh, what is there to learn about passive heat recovery? It's something that everyone knows. Any engineer worth his salt will be able to work out passive heat recovery system on a plant that uses heat. So, but it was more around heat as a system, or heat recovery as a system. Because if you think about plants that have installed passive heat recovery over a number of years, have they considered over all those years, from beginning to end, the integration of those different recovery systems, the coefficient of performance on a combined level for all those systems that have been installed, and what if they had have installed them all at the same time in the beginning? And it would have, the answer that we found will be forthcoming from Gundagai is it will be an extremely good coefficient of performance. It'll perform extremely well, both on an economic basis and an energy saving basis. Now, there's a few steps to that passive heat recovery because there's some uplift going on, but I won't go through that. We'll leave that for the conference to talk about.
Indeed.
Yep.
And it's not only, you're saying other meat processors, anyone who has industrial refrigeration is going to be able to apply this sort of heat recovery process and this system that you guys have done there, and or supported with Gundagai. So
yep.
Really looking forward to that one. Anything else happening in that sort of energy water nexus space, trying to on the horizon that you guys are working with others to test some new concepts and things on it all? Yep,
there's the Econolyzer project you probably will have heard about. It's a water efficiency and thermal efficiency project. What it does, and I mentioned before around the 82 degree temperatures used on the slaughter floor for sanitisation of implements. What the Econolyzer does is it does that process, but it uses less water through a motion activated spray at a certain pressure for a certain period of time to get that sanitisation. And of course it's using less water, it uses less temperature, uses less thermal energy. The estimated savings, or the proven savings so far from that project, is 90% per unit in both water and energy. But going forward, what we've got to do with that more sophisticated discovery around the Econolyzer is for a full plant installation, there might be, say, 40 units. How does that affect then the management of the boiler? So we can say, yes, we're saving 90% water on an individual unit, but if you install dozens of them, how then do you translate that saving into the operation of the boiler and still manage your plant in a risk and all those things you've got to do?
You've got a boiler turning on and off all the time and what have you, but hey, this is R&D. You should never underestimate when you're doing a new process how much it affects the wider process and the overall operation. So exactly why we need organisations like AMPC diving in there and saying, let's do this properly and let's really work out how this is going to be implemented. Certainly, I've seen over the years, if you just throw it in there, let's see how she goes, you're not going to understand that wider impact. Huh?
No, that's right. And I think the other we were talking earlier about the environmental performance review and the reporting, the measurement side of what the business does and what our members do. That initial part of monitoring and knowing your baseline and knowing your numbers, that's been the part that members have spent a lot of time on in recent years so that they can now figure out what to do and what their baselines are.
They're already improving their performance, the meat processing sites. It looks like there's still plenty of technology to be implemented. It looks like they're going to become even more important community assets with digestate and what have you. Feels like lots to do, but plenty of good stuff, eh?
Yeah, there's lots of good things. We also know what things still need work on as well, so that's important. So we can be transparent for communities around, yes, we do know we have some problems and we do know what they are and we have got a plan to work on those as well.
Matt Deegan, thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Jarrod.
joining us on the Energy Exchange.
It's been great.